Hey everybody, I'm Tarl Yarber, and welcome to another episode of Fixated on Real Estate Experts Live. Today's episode, we have a very special guest. It's my good buddy, Mr. Tommy Christy. He's out of Sacramento, California. This guy's literally done thousands of properties in his career, and we really focused on fix and flip today and cash-on-cash return, margins, different markets to invest in, what to look out for. And we really kind of dive later into construction cost and rehab and so forth for those of people that are out there fix and flipping. The market's very different today, as we all know. We also know that everything is changing all the time right now, and the future is a little uncertain. But for right now, we certainly are convinced that the market is going up for most areas that you are investing in, or most of you guys that are watching this are in right now. We've had a lot of success in real estate over the last 12 months, a lot more than we thought would actually happen when we started doing these shows back in March 2020, when the lockdown was happening, and it was really starting to be a big question mark on what's going on with the market. Still is a question mark, but I do know this: rates are driving up prices, and there's a lot of demand out there for people to buy properties. A lot of renters, due to a rental supply issue, are starting to buy properties and so forth. And actually, sometimes for renters, it's cheaper to buy. So what does that do for house flippers? Is it increases our prices for when we go to resell them. On the other side, if you're a landlord, there's a lack of supply of rentals out there, and that might actually help your basically profits as well as landlord or a house flipper. So we dive into a lot of that today. I'm very excited to have you guys introduce you guys to Tommy Christy, and also, of course, Mr. Jay Scott, who's with us. And for those of you guys watching this on our YouTube versus our audio only version, you might be wondering why I might have a big mark on my forehead right now. We recorded this intro for you guys later, actually a couple hours after the show, in between the end of the show that you're about to listen to and right now when I'm recording the intro. I went over to Brandon Turner's house. We live in Maui right now, and him and I do jiu-jitsu on Wednesdays. We also do it on Monday and Friday. And today we got a little aggressive today, and you should see what he looks like right now. But for those of you guys listening to this audio only, you don't see the big mark on my forehead that happened during the jiu-jitsu tournament today between Brandon Turner and I. Kicked his ass as always, but he cried a lot of snot. It's kind of sad when you watch him, and so forth. But, we're not going to put that on YouTube or any kind of social media because we don't want to embarrass him. But, all right, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump into the show. Hey, everybody. I am Tarl Yarber with Fixated Real Estate. Welcome once again to another episode of Fixated on Real Estate Experts Live. I am your host of the show. And we are once again joined with our perpetual guest, Mr. Jay Scott, who officially cannot be the host due to his obligations to the Bigger Pockets Business Podcast, which is a great show you should listen to at all times and all hours of the evening and night. We are joined today by my good buddy, Mr. Tommy Christy. Him and I met a little over a year and a half ago, give or take. He is based out of Sacramento, California, which is where I grew up. Actually, I grew up not far from there in a little area called Rancho Cordova. Rancho Dova Thugs right here. Here we go. And Cordova Lancers was my high school. Just spoiler alert on that. And I was very, very happy to leave Sacramento and come up to Seattle maybe about a decade ago. And now I live in Maui. So all better places. Sorry for Sacramento people listening to us. Anyway, we're gonna jump into a lot of stuff today. I'm excited to hear from Tommy. Tommy is a foreclosure expert as well as a fix and flip mogul, and he is in multiple markets today. He is still scratching all over the place for those foreclosures, and he's got a lot of insight for all of us to share. And of course, Jay and I, we dabble in the whole fix and flip thingies as well. So we have a lot of insight for everybody today. We might cross over to the BRRRR strategy a bit: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That said, let's jump into it. Cool. Let's introduce Tommy. Tommy, I have your bio.
That's right. So
we're going to say this. Tommy Christy is a distressed real estate professional currently holding current holdings and flips across all property classes in multiple states. Tommy has been attending foreclosure sales by daily in NorCal since 2002, probably known best for his time as a regional president of Northern California's Invitation Homes. Invitation Homes was an industry leader charge changer by acquiring, leasing, and stabilizing 80,000 homes nationally in just 4 years. Current activities for Mr. Tommy include rehabilitation of his mobile home park, Midwest Rentals BRRRRs, a small multifamily development, S.F.O.R.E, fixed flips, Northern California with over 2,000 transactions. Tommy Christy is a ninja when it comes to
I love real
flips. Loves real estate. So you know a thing or two about real estate. You got a bunch of projects going on, and you have how many projects do you guys typically have before COVID that you were working on for fix and flip for you and your business?
Yep. So our we've rolled between $4 and $8 million at any given time, as you know, in the market, whatever will buy us. Typically, that was about 40 flips at a time. And this year, we've been able to kind of scale that back. The market has given us a gift. You know, I can't take control over that part of it. It's just been, we were in 2019, it was safe to say we were taking deals at like a 12 and a 10% return on investment, and they were delivering eights. Now we're taking eights and they're delivering 12s. It's just a really interesting shift. So right now we probably only have 25 active projects that don't include holdings.
Got it.
Like long-term holdings.
So we'll talk about that more as we get into it, especially with those fancy numbers you said of 8s and 12s and what that actually means to our viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Jay Scott, what you got cooking in your real estate business right now?
Not that much. So what are we doing? We're looking for more big multifamily. We're flipping a few properties, nowhere near what Tommy's doing. I think we're doing 3 or 4 at the moment. And we're buying a bunch of single family rentals. So we're kind of all in on the rentals over the last few months.
Cool. We'll talk about that too. And then for the different markets, we're all in different markets right now. For us, we only have a handful of flips we're doing. We got a couple burrs. We have 2 commercial properties that we're working on. One is a major, almost practically tear down. It's actually cool. We've been doing some time lapse photography on that, so it's gonna be fun to share with you guys later. And in reality, we're just like sitting, looking, and we have our current properties. We want to buy more. Our current market in Pacific Northwest is pretty flooded heavily with a lot of eager people fixing, flipping, and buying properties at those lower cash on cash returns that Tommy just said, that 8 to 12%, which is something that I'm not used to doing in my market. And because of that, our volumes dropped down, and I'm not willing to drop my margins down. So let's talk about that too. Now, in today's market, Tommy, what markets are you currently investing in?
So our primary foreclosure and distress markets are the 8 counties surrounding northern Sacramento, Yuba, Sutter, Placer, El Dorado. We are down into Amador, Calaveras, and then Solano. We take anything into, say, Alameda County and further north above Butte, but the easiest access to volume is kind of that 90, 100 miles around Sacramento market. For us.
And then Jay, what markets are you in right now?
So we are doing multifamily in Texas and hopefully North Carolina pretty soon. And we do single family in Maryland, Georgia, and Florida.
Got it. So, and then I'm in Pacific Northwest, blah, blah, blah. So that said, for today's market, so I want to go into that margin stuff. So some of these people that are listening to us and watching us right now, they're either brand new people that are getting into single family fix and flip, or they're savvy investors. So there's a handful of people that listen to us regularly that do a lot of volume in different markets across the US. And there's definitely a good chunk of people that are doing onesie twosies or just starting out. So we all buy fix and flips for a specific margin that we're looking for. And for me, my margin was always 15% cash on cash return or higher for the Pacific Northwest. Now, Tommy, you just mentioned a second ago that you were buying properties pre-COVID at a 12, 10 or 12, and they were selling at an 8. Can you explain what that means for people in more like layman's terms?
Yeah, great question. So as the deal's presented to us, say from a wholesale source, or if we're looking at it at the actual auction, if I'm going to lay out $100,000, I would like to net at least 12, and that's my 12%, net. And so that's after commissions, after title, escrow, rehabilitation, and the simple way of what bled us the most was construction costs exceeded our, optimistic rehab budget. And, so if you're assuming you're going to put $30,000 in, and in the end it was 42, we were making $8,000 for every $100,000 we had in the market. And so you lay out $300K, you only make 24, but you have the standard cost of overhead and everything associated with that. It kind of bleeds out if you're not personally managing it well. And so it became a kind of a management issue on our part.
Okay. So basically overly optimistic on your rehab budgets, and then it comes back, rehab budget goes up, reduces your profits at the back end.
Yep. And now that's shifted in 2020. All the COVID markets were delivering us an extra 4%, like over asking. I mean, part desperation, part we're bringing to market one of the only rehabilitated homes. I mean, when you're getting FHA financing or other, you get to finance the cost of all of our repairs into that versus if someone were to buy it, fix it themselves and try and save that margin. The market here has just been delivering 20, 30, 40,000 bucks sometimes over market for houses.
Wow. So you list a house and it's going over market. So that's, and the versus pre-COVID, it wasn't doing that as much in your area, but now
not as much. I mean, you'd have it for price points. I think the move up market, maybe it's the exact same in the Pacific Northwest, is that people who are moving out of a great house and into a greater house, they're willing to pay a little bit more out of that because they have, the gift of equity. Mm-hmm. And those kind of markets for us have always delivered, like a 3, 4, 5% over asking sometimes. But now it's like almost everything in certain price points are selling over asking.
And Jay, so we're talking, I mean, Tommy and I are on the West Coast, right? And West Coast has always been notoriously known for a higher appreciating market out there. And even, there might be some parts of the Washington, Oregon, California market that don't appreciate as hardcore as other parts of the Washington, Oregon, California market. But you've always been on the East Coast in a bunch of different markets that haven't always been known as like massive appreciation areas. But, they get regular appreciation, 3%, 5%, that kind of stuff, depending on where you are. What are you seeing today since COVID? I mean, you and I have been doing these webinars since March of last year when lockdown happened. And we've gone from, holy crap, don't do anything to, wow, the market's going up, let's start buying. And so what are you seeing in your neck of the woods on the East Coast and the markets you're in as far as appreciation, listing homes, going over ask, if any?
Yeah, certainly we're seeing, given the fact that there is a very constrained supply where I am, and I'm guessing it's like that in much of the country. So I'm in Sarasota, Florida, where I live. So I track the data here probably more closely than other markets where I work. But in Sarasota, literally year over year, we're 25% less inventory this year, Q4 of 2020 versus Q4 of 2019. And anytime you have literally, that's just a ridiculous number, 25% fewer houses being listed when the supply is that constrained. But demand hasn't dropped, you're going to see prices spike. So in Florida, I've seen prices spike. In Georgia, I've seen prices go up. In Maryland, I've seen prices spike. Typically speaking, in those areas that are suburbs, good school districts, nice neighborhoods, we're seeing prices spike. And it's just a natural consequence of the fact that that supply is so constrained. So
it's like it's just a pure supply and demand situation is what you think it is?
Certainly play a part. Nobody's going to deny that being able to get long-term debt at 3 or 4% isn't going to help everything. But rates have been there since March. And so I don't imagine there are that many people who are back in March were saying, oh, rates aren't good enough, I'm going to hold off. And then finally today are saying, okay, rates are finally good enough, I'm going to buy. Yeah. And so certainly there are some things that might help the market moving forward. The incoming president has said that he's going to have some first-time homebuyer tax credits for anybody that's buying a home for the first time in the last 3 years. Obviously, there could be some negative aspects there too. So some benefits of real estate ownership could go away with the incoming administration. So we don't know what's going to happen moving forward. But I think there are a lot of different factors that impact supply and demand. But I think just the constrained supply, mostly due to COVID, in my opinion, is the thing that's impacting the market the most. And so once we see COVID kind of blow over, which hopefully next 3, 6, 9 months, I have a feeling that we're going to see prices stabilize, maybe soften a little bit.
And is that because you'll see supply go up or?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people sitting at home right now. I've talked to a lot of sellers or potential sellers who are sitting at home right now thinking, I'm ready to sell my house. Look at the prices out there. I want to get out and I want to take a profit. But I don't want buyers trampling through my house during COVID.
Yeah.
And especially here in Florida, where it tends to be a really old population or an older population, there are a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with listing their house right now. So I have a feeling that once that's no longer a concern, once people get vaccinated, once COVID is somewhat in our rearview mirror, there are going to be a lot of people who have been saying for the last year, I'm ready to sell. I'm ready to sell. Let's go test the market. And when all those houses hit the market, I have a feeling we're gonna see some softening.
What do you think about that, Tommy?
I think that the cycles here in California are pretty well predicted. I mean, you go back into the 70s, you see them just up and you see them down, you see them up and you see them down. And every single time you can read articles and you can try and hypothesize as to which one, where we're at into that. I feel like we probably have a good solid year of running in the same speed that we are right now, because the lack of rental supply has really kind of driven people towards buying here. And it's probably the exact same where Jay's at, that there's just a shortage of these rentals and people are paying more just to be able to get access to the shelter or the school district that they're wanting to live in. So it's tough to, look past it, because none of us saw how, 2020 coming, so it's there. I think there are some real unknowns that might affect that. But for right now, it just feels like the lack of rentals is going to be really pushing our market a little bit higher.
So it's an interesting point. So like you're saying that like the tenants, the people that would normally be a renter, is just like, there's nowhere to rent. Let's just go look at buying.
Some people are gainfully employed. Yeah. And the builders make it really easy. Like we're seeing lines at some of the right developments again here in certain communities for the new builds, and they offer incentives if you use their lender, and the closing costs are low, and you get a 10-year warranty and a brand new house.
Wow.
So there's a lot of benefits that kind of prop up the expansion of the market. We have aging product here, and our political policies don't really help. Our lending is not really helping there either. So I think a lot of people that are selling stuff because of management issues or other, they're converting people and tenants into owners.
I guess that's definitely market dependent, like in my opinion. Like, so California, I'm surprised there's anybody still living in California, to be honest with you, but with what's been going on there over the last 12 months. But it sounds like, okay, well, California has very strict landlord laws right now too, and they're continuously getting more strict every day, plus strict foreclosure laws. And of course, high taxes are going up. Everything's just, really changing there politically quite a bit. So what I'm hearing from you is that also a lot of landlords are like, well, one, I can't get rid of my tenant, so forget it. Let's go ahead and sell it, right? Because I'm tired of being a landlord here. And that now reduces the rental pool as well. And then builders are building to sell. And then it's just, even us, like we live in Maui right now, but we're renting where we're living right now. And if I bought this house, it would be cheaper for me every single month than it would be what I pay for rent right here. And
really?
So cheaper just because of rates, because of the way rates are. And it's a nice house. It's 3,400 square feet, big house, everything. And, but it would actually be cheaper for me to buy it than it would be to rent it when it comes to it. And do you think that's sometimes a factor for some of these tenants in certain high rent areas like California? Is that cheaper for them because of low rates just to buy than the rent?
The low rates are really, really interesting, and how, like when you pencil out a 2.5% interest mortgage, it is really, but when we were at 5.5 or 6 or something like that, trying to, keep the market up where it was, say in the last boom, we didn't see this kind of irrationally low interest rate. And what I'm finding also what's affecting the rental supply is some of these lenders, they're taking them back and stabilizing them as rentals. There's enough people out there. Invitation Homes is deploying another $400 million to buy more rentals, and they're partnering with companies that are buying more rentals. So there's a comfort in the lack of rental supply that is technically or temporarily kind of holding up a portion of the bottom of that market. So even the most affordable stuff, which we wouldn't touch before, is looking a whole lot more appealing.
So that's interesting. With I've always said follow the money, right? At times, right? And so is most of us. You hear that from a lot of stock analysis people or whatever. Like follow where the big, successful stock people invest, right? So what does Warren Buffett do? So you look at these hedge funds out there, like Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, like Colony Capital, like all those big groups. If you just said that Invitation is looking to take another 400 million to buy more rental property.
Yeah. Now, reminder, they're in 14 major markets. So maybe it's in South Carolina, and maybe their Seattle market, which is delivering amazing, returns on both hybrid returns of appreciation and rent. Or maybe it's, because we stopped in NorCal waiting to figure out what was going to happen with the politics. For a while, we just paused.
Yeah. So I guess if you're listening to this, guys, why would big, large investment groups like that be outlaying that much money to keep buying more real estate?
And if you're listening, if you're looking at those groups, there's a major opportunity there to just be moving product to the funds, not even the top three. I'm talking about numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10 who have 300 million to deploy, or, they're trying to get to a feasibility number where they have enough units under management that they can capitalize on it. All of these, you have to reach that threshold of how many rentals you own. So
there was a big industry of operators out there that would flip homes directly to hedge funds, right?
Yep.
And they would find out they could sell it on the market for 200, but the hedge fund will buy it for 220, right? Or whatever, because of the specific margin the hedge fund was looking for. So depending on where you are in the US, there's some of you guys listening to this might have done that before.
It's gross yield. And some people think about it like it's a science. A lot of times it's really not. This thing's going to rent for $1,500 times 12 months, divided by what the purchase price is going to be. And each of the funds have a lower or higher gross yield, depending on how well they're financed. And the tranches of the actual money that goes in to take out the expensive money, they're borrowing at the same, 2s and 3% that we are.
Now, I've said this on other webinars. My challenge to all of you guys listening to this is buy all those properties before the hedge funds do. Right? That's my thing. It's keep them away from the hedge funds. Keep them yourself. Let the small investor continue to be a small investor. That's my mentality with it, at least.
Yeah.
Jay, what are your thoughts on all that?
I'd rather just start a hedge fund and it's things are crazy right now, and I'm really interested in seeing how things shake out. Going back to what you were talking about earlier, Tarl, we see the same thing here where I am. I'm in a highly touristy area part of Florida. I live 2 miles from the number one beach in the country, and rents here are higher than home values or mortgage payments. When we moved here a year and a half ago, our plan was to rent for a year, learn the area, figure out where we wanted to go. We came down, we started looking at houses, and we realized that to rent a house that we could buy for a $2,000 a month mortgage payment, we were going to pay $3,400 a month. Literally,
wow.
80% higher to rent it. And so we said, wow, okay. And within 48 hours, we had put a house under contract to buy, and we had given up on trying to rent. And I think that's a function of certain areas. And also, like you were saying, given what's happened with COVID, we've seen a lot of stuff happen in the real estate's become a lot more location dependent. There are a lot of people who want to be out of the big cities and into the suburbs. They want more space, so they're buying larger places. People have the ability to work more remotely than they did even 10 months ago. So there are a lot of people that are moving to places that otherwise they wouldn't have moved. I think a lot of people starting to realize that taxes are going to go through the roof with all the stimulus and other constraints that we've had. So a lot of people moving to places like Florida and Texas and
Nevada,
Washington and Nevada, all those places that have zero state income tax. A lot of people leaving California for obvious reasons. Don't get me wrong. Favorite place.
People.
Yeah. Put it this way, I wish California were a lot cheaper. I'd move back, but I wouldn't invest there. I love California, but it's not particularly friendly to landlords and investors. So what we're seeing is, while for the last 10 years, real estate, after the 2008 crash, real estate has been somewhat homogenous across the country. Values have kind of gone up steadily, some places a little more than others, whatever. But we haven't seen really disparate markets around the country over the last 10 years. for the first time now in a while, we're starting to see really disparate markets. Certain places are really taking off. Other places are still pretty flat. There are other places that we're still seeing a downturn. San Francisco is a good example. I don't know what Seattle prices are doing now, but there were a few months back last year that things were softening in Seattle. So, I mean, everything I think moving forward is going to be more location dependent, and people are going to be making decisions in using factors other than where they work. Historically, that's where people have decided where they're going to live. It's based on where they work. They're going to be making decisions based on other factors moving forward.
Yeah. So let's shift gears. Let's get into the nitty gritty, right? So we tell people we're going to talk about deal analysis and sourcing properties for us house flippers. And also, let's get into some construction stuff, because some things have changed since in a current-ish hopefully post COVID world. And moving on for that, depending on what state you live in, will depend on if it's post-free or not. I'm just going to throw that out there. But for now, California, it's like always going to be COVID for the next 10 years. Probably.
Forever.
So that said, let's go into that. So margins, let's talk about margins, right? What are we guys buying at? What do you guys suggest people to buy out? How do you suggest people to map their own margin for what they should buy out as a house flipper, like specifically house flipping? My margins have changed over years a little bit, right? But how I come to those margins haven't changed. And how I analyze deals. Huh?
What do you mean? What do you mean? How you come to those margins?
Like, meaning I still calculate them the same way. Like I do, I just do everything based on cash return, right? That's how I look at it, right?
Got it.
So but how I I'll do 20% now because I don't feel as risky. Now I'll do 15 because I'm like, cool, it's all good, right? And then, but how I adjust that and how do I calculate like how much my rehab is going to be, all that kind of great stuff. So, but let's go into that. Like you mentioned, Tommy, that you guys were buying at a 12, right? For instance, that was
yeah. It's just a super safe place to be, and I think it's important to classify myself as an operator, as a very active flipper. There are a lot of people who are going to do 4 deals this year that can take stuff, that can actually hit a rehab budget, that can manage it better. And my 12s are their 15s. It's not like it's lesser or other. Mine's a very conservative 12 is a better way to put that, which means I take into account the fact that my efficiencies in my rehab spend per day and other metrics that really matter into making that decision is that I won't take a 12% margin on a $100,000 fixer if I think it's going to take me 6 months. I would rather take an 8% or a lower margin on a 1990 or newer, stucco tile roof 3.2. Just a simple product, lesser margins. And our market is actually delivering less than that for people who are buying vacants. Mm-hmm. But if you're buying it right, the margins, for me, our biggest filter right now is rehabilitation, the availability of contractors, the availability of materials. And that affects what kind of margin it will take.
That's a huge point today. That's like if we lined up 10 house flippers that are savvy people, or even 10 newer ones, the construction cost is the big thing. That's this big question mark today on so many levels. And we're definitely going to jump into that one. Let's clarify what we mean by margins, like cash on cash return, really quick on that. Jay, do you want to take that?
So for me, I don't like to think about cash on cash return because it gets complicated for a flip for a couple of reasons. One, if you do it the right way, quote unquote, you hopefully aren't putting any of your own money. You hopefully aren't putting any of your own money in it. I've been using private money for my flips for a while now. So my cash on cash, even if I make $1, my cash on cash returns the same as if I make $50,000 because it's no cash in and some cash out. So
let's call it project return, because that's how I look at it is the same way you look at it, but I still say cash on cash. It's just I'm looking at it more project based. Like if we invested all this money ourselves, kind of a thing. Yeah,
I actually prefer to keep it really simple, and I look at my return based on my resale price. Okay. So for me, it doesn't matter. And when I say it doesn't matter, it does matter. But it evens out over a large number of projects. So I'm going to say it doesn't matter whether I'm doing a $5,000 rehab. Not that I've done a $5,000 rehab in the last 10 years, but if I'm doing right, exactly. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a $20,000 rehab or an $80,000 rehab. I look for a return based on the sale price. And it's not to say that I should want more return on an $80,000 rehab than a $20,000 rehab, because there's more risk, there's more time, there's more money that's being spent. But at the end of the day, I just assume that it's all going to average out. It's all going to kind of come out in the wash. And so I look for a return on my sale price, and that's 15%. So if I resell a house at $200,000, I want to make $30,000. If I resell a house at $500,000, I want to make $75,000. So I take 15% of whatever I expect to resell for, so whatever the ARV is, and that's my target profit.
Interesting. So that's a simplified version too. So you can sit there and tell. I think here's one good thing as a house flipper: if you can do this for yourself, like Jay can explain that really quickly to an agent and a wholesaler, right? To a sense, like if you sell me a house, whatever the ARV is after repair value is, I want to make at least 15% of that. And so there, no questions asked. Good to go. Good to go. All right. So now everything else is like up in the air. What's rehab costs? Everything else like that. For me, I'd say things a little differently, but let's go through that really quick. So, Tommy, how do you calculate, once again, your 12 or your 8 that you're talking about? What's your way to calculate?
Yeah, we're speaking
keep it simple. Like I'm a wholesaler. You're going to tell me to go find a property for you, and I'm like, well, what kind of deal are you looking for? Right? How are you going to say that to me?
By the way, the wholesale market right now is gold. Like the amount of people who get in to just try and start doing deals, and they're about to do their first deal or other. My encouragement there is pick up the phone and call investors like ourselves, because there is a tremendous opportunity for you to present any given transaction to us for $220 without us having any idea what you paid for it. And so that comes down to, my pitch to the wholesalers is we really need to leave a 10% margin in this deal. And the two filters that come into play that maybe I'll make a higher margin will be, is it a significantly greater rehabilitation project? Or if I get stuck with this, can I actually rent it? There's a great price point. Some of these states, that 160 or below is the safest buy, fix, and sell out there right now. And I would take some of those even a little tighter, because the rents will cover the mortgage when you can get, assuming that whatever the problem in the market is there's still debt out there, which in the world economy, it doesn't seem like that's going to be stopping anytime soon. We have access to money. And one of the questions I had seen in the chain there was the cost of debt is a very safe. Some people are lending it to the person, and you can get 8% debt, but it's a very safe number to say you're getting 10% money. The cost of money. Now, when you bring in a broker or other, and there's transaction fees and broker fees and appraisals and title and escrow and doc fee and every fee in the world, you take that into your annualized cost of your money. And so as long as you've taken that out of what you're assuming your net is, it's an actual net, we're still trying to make $10,000 on every 100,000 we put out into the market. And then certain riskier projects, we just won't touch them for less than a 15. It's just because we can afford to be wrong on certain kinds of products or certain kinds of neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And then on our end, I think this all depends on what market you're in, right? All this depends on what market you're in. I've got friends in Vegas that are like, I'll do 10% all day. Phoenix, 10% all day. Sacramento, 10% all day, right? Pacific Northwest, most of us are 15+%. Yeah. We have a smaller pool of properties, a lot of high risk just due to, we have older homes, 100-year-old properties, 60-year-old properties, 120-year-old properties. Like there's a lot of unknown factors, massive rehabs, $100,000 to $200,000 rehabs at a minimum for some parts in Seattle, like period, which I think you can find in our area, $150,000 rehab for me could be $300,000 for somebody else. Right.
But you have an older housing stock there, right? I mean, if you're
correct.
Talking about Seattle, it's a very older housing stock.
Correct. But the thing that's very fascinating to us on our team right now is that we'll get a deal sent to us at an 8% cash on cash return. And we'll be like, no, but it'll sell because there's all these eager beaver real estate investors out there in Pierce County, Washington, that just are betting on the market going up, or they're so new, they don't understand the rehab side. And either way, right, they actually might make money still just because the way the market is right now, and they'll look amazing on paper. I'm just not willing to take that risk. So we do a 15% cash on cash. And the way we calculate it out is that the entire project outlay. So if it's $100,000 purchase and a $50,000 rehab, right? Then when we go to resell it, after all closing costs, commissions, everything, whatever profit is left over needs to be 15% of the total costs that went into the project that was out of pocket cost. such as purchase and rehab. Because you don't pay real estate commissions out of pocket. That comes off the seller settlement statement. So your net profit after you sell the property needs to be 15% of the out-of-pocket cost of the purchase and rehab.
And how many do you think you're turning down to get to that right now? Like, I mean, if you're
a lot. So for what it used to be, because that's the thing. We'll get 20 wholesalers to send us 20 properties, and they're not in the margin that we're looking for, right? And we bought a 14% like not that long ago, which we were fine with. And for me, that's like a cosmetic and stuff. We're still paying $80,000 of rehab on it, and for that 14% cosmetic rehab, actually, so 2,100 square foot home. And so for us, a cosmetic is still could still be up $100,000, right, in a rehab process. So it's a little different in our market for sure. But if you're in Seattle and you flip 5 homes a year, you're up there as far as like, high level house flipper here. And versus Sacramento, you flip 5 a month, right? Or whatever. So it's a little different. But I think what you'll find, everybody listening to this, is that we can have another 8 or 9 or 20 different house flippers on here, and we're all going to have a slightly different answer. And we're all going to have a slightly different way that we look at properties. And you as a wholesaler out there or a realtor got to know that the better buyer pool you have, the better your buyers, the better you can move properties too, especially if you're a wholesaler. Because what Tommy might not buy, I might buy. What I might not buy, Jay might buy. But you got to know that, right? What are we looking for, in my opinion, with that?
And how hungry are we on the buy side? I mean, we got to a point where certain wholesalers asked us for like kind of an upfront advertising fee, and we invested in them. Like guys, people that were bringing us worthwhile volume before it was, they needed some money, some gas in the tank to advertise. So at certain points in time, you just, when you know how much product you can take and you have a construction crew hungry and ready to be able to turn the stuff over, we actively bid margins down a little bit. But there's that comfort level we try and stay at.
So let's talk about the big, huge part of analyzing these deals that are messing all us up to these days. Let's talk about rehab and construction costs, right? Now, in a post-COVID, during COVID, current, whatever, unemployment insanity that's happening right now too, that's not being reported correctly. Are we finding that like labor and everything and construction and whatnot, is that going up or is that going down in most parts of the US right now?
I'm finding everything is the cheapest it's been like my entire life. Like contractors are throwing themselves at me, begging to do work. And no, I'm just kidding. I'm like, sorry.
Really? I was believing you.
So literally my phone is ringing. I was listening to you guys, but I'm sitting here having an angry text thread with my electrician over a quote he just got me about a half hour ago for a house. Like I've been stewing about this for a half hour, basically the same scope of work for a house he did for me like 3 or 4 months ago. And it's double. And I was like, well, what's the difference? And
materials, it's gone up.
No, he was honest. He was honest with me. He said, the difference is that I have 10 jobs to choose from right now. And I love working for you, but you pay me less than all the retail customers. And so that's the reality right now. I don't want to say it's the same for all locations, but it's definitely in the places I'm doing work. And again, those are the places that tend to be doing well with COVID, Texas, Florida, Georgia. A lot of people moving there, a lot of work there. So contractors are super busy. And we can talk about materials as well. I'm just talking about labor right now. Contractors are super busy. They have their choice of jobs. Maybe they'll do some work for investors. But if you have a choice between working for an investor at anything other than retail prices and working for a homeowner, and even if the investor's willing to pay retail. I know a lot of contractors that would just rather work with a homeowner than they would an investor, because let's face it, we're a pain in the ass.
Yep.
And so yeah, these days things are really, really expensive. And then you factor in materials. Steel prices are through the roof. Lumber prices are through the roof. Still any materials that are coming over from China. So light fixtures and plumbing fixtures, we're finding they're still inflated prices. Things are just really, really expensive. And then just with all the work that's being done, trying to get a dumpster has been difficult. And so there's just, there are a lot of things coming together that's making it really expensive to do jobs these days.
Yeah, because we also forget this one other part too. Rates reduced dramatically, right? Is that just for home buyers? Or did everybody start pulling out refinances,
Credit.
cash out, HELOCs, whatever you could take? And what's the average person do with a HELOC or a rate ref or a cash out refi for the primary residence, especially in a COVID world?
They use it to do renovations.
Use it for renovations, right? Or buy a car and get in more debt.
That's-
But on average, people are using it for renovations for their house. And so, and that's the thing that we're forgetting sometimes. We're like, wait a second, why are the contractors so busy? It's not from house flippers and builders. It's from the homeowners doing renovations on their homes.
Our market, and I think for the beginning flippers and anybody who is a seasoned veteran, one of the metrics I think is key to pay attention to is that rehab spend per day. So if you take a deal down that's a $30,000 deal and you have one contractor and he personally will be doing the tile himself, he'll be doing the baseboards himself, he'll be doing the paint himself. It's like it could take him 3-4 weeks, then you're at $1,000 a day on 28-day rehab, ballpark $30,000. You spend about $1,000 a day. But if you start subbing out and having contractors kind of tripping over each other for a $60,000 rehab that you're trying to get done in 30 days, then you're spending $2,000 a day. And that's that metric of how fast on velocity can we get our money back and reinvest it. And so I believe that it makes it worth our while to pay the higher construction prices to some of these trades. Whereas before, we may have had a unlicensed tile guy come through and do the bathroom, the floors or the laundry room or something. Now you have a licensed guy who's paying these laborers himself with a 15% markup on top of that. And he's a week out or 10 days out or 2 weeks out. So you wait for trades and it still ends up getting you back down to that $1,000 a day metric that, really changes things. So
he's gone.
And he's just gone.
That's funny.
So anyway, it's a big change for people to, really pay attention to those kinds of costs. And, it's hard to negotiate with someone who, if you're choosing between good and great, you're fine. But most of the time you're choosing between no contractor and the only one available, and you end up paying.
Well, I can tell you from our business, actually, we made a decision a couple of years ago to have less stress in our lives, in our rehab projects and stuff, by hiring better, more expensive contractors, actually. So, because we spent years doing, on average, we'd have between like 17 to 23 active rehabs going on in the Pacific Northwest area for ourselves. And we'd have a full-time project manager. We'd have, we'd just be all over it all the time. And we're trying to reduce the cost as much as possible. And we're trying to get it done as fast as possible. And it was just constantly stressing out versus if we would have just said, you know what, this is us, maybe a different model for what we're looking at than what you were just saying, Tommy, was, okay, yeah, we can get this done in 60 days, but our lives would be a lot less stressful if we get it done in 90 days, kind of a thing. And
so you think?
Yeah, well, for us, it actually did work that way. And so, go ahead.
Do you guys have a metric of, on average, would you say the rehab is 20% of the purchase price of your home? Or is rehab?
It really depends, man. Sometimes 15? It's 100% of the purchase price where we're at. Yeah. So there's been projects I've had where we bought for, $150,000 in Tacoma and put $90,000 into them, right? Or we'd have, so it just depends on, we just bought one. Actually, we just bought one for 155, I think it was. I have to relook it up, but I think it was 155,000 in Tacoma. We're putting 140,000 into it. So, so almost 100%. But then we have one we bought for 305 a couple weeks ago or a few months ago, and we're putting 80 into it, right? So it's all over the place where we are.
That really hasn't been my market. Is I don't add on 2 bedrooms and a master bathroom, and that has never really been my. Because of how long
doing additions. This is all inside the
Title 24, like all kinds of issues to go along. It's people need to designate: is this a rehab? Is this a remodel? And the difference in there will, because you're going to rebuild it. If in theory, some of these things, if you're going to restore a home in downtown Seattle that's in a historic district, it's a restoration. You need to restore that home versus just a simple rehab, which is carpet, paint, doors, trim, kitchen, out, you're done. So
I think one thing we have a different in our market is that the simple rehab that you said of paint, doors, carpet, out, done, ended a long time ago in my market.
Really?
So,
I love that. It's bread and butter.
Yeah, it's a lot more challenging in our market, but for the way it is, because the person that is the reseller, the seller, not the reseller, but the original seller would just put it on the market, right? And they'd get a higher price point than selling to us if it's off market for a cosmetic, because there's plenty of new homeowners that were okay buying it to do a paint, carpet, trim, that kind of stuff in our market to begin with, because there is no supply, because there's no place to build in our area. So a little different, but I would say what we started doing, we used to have the biggest issues with our plumber and our electrician, right? We'd want to get a discount plumber and a discount electrician. We wanted, because those were always huge. Like Jay was just complaining about his electrician for the dollars, right? We'd have electricians, the savvy electrician wanting to charge us $12,000 for the house, but we got this one discount electrician who's licensed and bonded, all stuff like that. But he shows up when he shows up, he's $7,000. So we're like, cool, we'll save $5,000. But the $12,000 electrician is done in 2 days, rewiring the entire house. And when he cuts holes, he cuts them in little circles and leaves them into a nice little pile that you can redo. And he communicates with all the other subs, and he's a great guy, and there's no issues. The $7,000 electrician takes 3-4 weeks, and you don't know when he's coming back, and then he pisses off the other subs, and they get in arguments, and then you're babysitting children, and then he says he's going to be done, and then he's not, so you have to reschedule other people. I mean, sure, we might be saving $5,000 on the bid, but how much did we lose in time, energy, effort, stress on our part, right? And that's something that we had to take an analysis on ourselves. And our lives changed when we hired a better plumber and a better electrician in our business. But that might be different for those of you guys listening. But this is where those arguments can happen between people flipping houses and how we run our businesses, right? There's no one way to do it right, in my opinion.
But in California, I'm hiring, especially anything over a single story. I will not hire an unlicensed painter on a 2-story home, or anything that has to do with engineering at all. Not all those contractors and the permits required to do it all by the book. That stuff adds up on time, and that adds up on costs, drastically. So, plumbers, they could cause, you hire an unlicensed plumber and it causes a drip, which causes a mold problem, which leads its way down, the rabbit hole. So, there's just certain trades, electricians could start fires. So you only use these licensed electricians. It's just a simple fact, on how you do it.
I think that's also, so I've been in multiple states, you're in multiple states. And what we found is that, and I want to preface to people that, for me, I've definitely, this will be recorded. Tommy's already admitted a bunch of times hiring unlicensed trades.
There you go.
In the past, there'd be times where we'd save money, where it'd be like, hey, cool, we can get this guy in, he's a journeyman, right? Or whatever, he's not run his own business or something along those lines. But I've also now been audited by our labor and industries for the state of Washington, and they see every single check I wrote for 3 years in my businesses. Yeah. And then you got to, attune to that. If you get caught too much, if you do too much volume. Some states don't require people to get licensed in certain things like GCs and stuff like that. So
you can just file a piece of paper and you're a contractor.
Washington, if you want to be a general contractor, you literally pay I think it's $150 now or something.
Texas is the same way.
Yeah, you wait 30 minutes and you're a contractor, no test whatsoever. So everything's a little different, but just know your rules for where you are in your cities that you're investing in, because permitting is different too. And just in my area, there's 15 different cities that you can get permits in within a 45-minute drive of each other.
Or county.
Yeah, or counties too, right? And then there's if the city doesn't have a permit place, then the county does, right? So it just depends as well. And each one is different. Each one has their different process, their different timeline, their different systems. How long does it take?
But you have to build that into your time frame. It's critical to understand that takes time. Drawings and elevation sketches and the actual engineering. Sometimes it's a week to hand it to the engineer, the electrical engineer who does the electrical load, then the electrical guy gives it back, and it could cost months on projects you did not budget for that, and you could have been done with the whole house, but
you're just waiting.
Yeah, good times.
Been there, done that. We all have. Yeah. So, all right. So we got the cost of the rehab. Those are things that you guys have to pay attention to and figure out. And right now it's a big question mark. We have a lot of friends that were like, hey, what's it costing you to do X? And they're like, I don't know anymore what it costs to do anything. And so they're just getting bids left and right from people. Yeah. And that's the nature of the beast. And I think for most of you guys, that especially if you're starting out, I think that's going to be one of your hardest things that is conquering today is the construction rehab, depending on the market that you're in. And the markets we're mentioning, Jay goes through the same thing. You just heard him say he's arguing with a contractor right now on a bid that's double what it was just a couple months ago. So that's happening, right? And But I would say that your contractor is your best teammate if you have the right contractors.
And the relationship has to be built there. It is very much a relationship.
Very much. They're not the enemy. They're not trying to get one
Not
over
at all.
you, especially ones that you're using over time and you're working with them. And so you got to take care of them too, because they might be passing on things that make them more money just so they can keep the relationship with you.
I invite them out to my Airbnbs. It's like, hey, go on out, bring your kids, go to the snow. Like
take care of them.
They take your phone call when you call too. That makes a big difference.
Let them make money.
Yeah, they're in this. They're not in this to help you make money. This is how they make their money.
Especially when they see that you sold your house for $60,000 over asking.
But there is a science to it. We have a bid this week in Arkansas, and the guy said it's he didn't go to a specific time frame, but he said it's about $5,500. And at a labor rate of $105 an hour, you're thinking, okay, you're telling me you're going to be there for 6 days straight. Well, let me revisit that. Like if it takes how long it takes, so if you're willing to just kind of gamble on a labor and material, it saves you a few $1,000 versus a guy saying it's $5,500, keeping it vague.
Yeah. I can argue probably that all day. I hate labor and materials bids and
makes
stuff.
Me happy.
Oh, I can't stand them. Like I won't.
If you're on site, it makes you happy because you genuinely only pay for what you need to. But if you're at a desk and you're flipping homes from a desk, you're not going to be able to manage it.
Yeah. I can't plug labor and material, hourly rates into my spreadsheet. So
no,
it's very challenging.
You use your spreadsheet to include per diems, insurance, utilities. You go to that depth to decide how you would get your net.
Mm.
Do you?
Yeah, totally.
All of that's on your spreadsheet. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. But I want to plug one number in the rehab column. So,
yeah, 30.
Yeah. 30,000. That's what it is.
$30,000.
Yeah, good to go. So let's talk about, so since we're on the rehab side, let's talk about inspections when you're coming to go resell the property. That's something that we don't talk about enough on this show. Is you're done selling that, you're done fixing up the house, you put it on the market, the buyer comes through and they get an inspection to your house, and they come back with a list of repairs they want done. And it's way more than you ever wanted to do. Are you seeing more of that today or less, or any kind of balance?
You know what? I would say in this last quarter, it's been in our favor. People will come in without contingencies in order to be competitive in a very competitive real estate market. People are like, we'll take it. Like, just, we'll have our lender send you the money. Like, from that standpoint, most people will go over there, make sure the doors are not out of, shim or something like that. There's no foundational issues to it, and take it. Now, and sometimes when you have a backup buyer too, you have leverage to make sure that you don't get eaten alive on requests for repairs. But you do have to dig in deep and try and figure out, is it the agent who's just representing that for their client, or is it the client that really is giving you a 30-point request for repairs? And then you have to time cost of money for skipping over to the backup offer and other. There's never a scenario that matches the next one that comes through. If you're taking on debt or other, but that's the same way when you're doing your own inspections on purchases too. So most of the time we're coming in without contingencies in order to be competitive.
Yeah. So if you have multiple offers, then you could kind of shove into the face of the buyer going like, you can ask for all these repairs, but we got like 6 other offers waiting. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
And
right.
They shrink their time period. They got to get it done in 7 days or 9 days or other.
I like that. And then I know that on the other aspect of it, when it comes to like when somebody lists an entire list of repairs, and you said, whether is it the buyer, is it the client, or is it the agent that's asking for this? I've noticed this right now because there's a lot of newer agents out there. And when you have, and if you're based on the numbers you had said earlier on your purchase price, it sounds like it's a lot of first-time home buyer kind of priced homes. Am I correct in assuming that for where you are right now, Tommy?
Let's say the question again.
Are you selling a lot of first-time home buyer priced homes?
Yeah, I love that. That's my favorite market. If I could spend as much time as possible in that sub 300K, that sub 350 price point, that is a fast market for us.
Got it. So I love first-time home buyers too. But what I found is that when you have a brand new agent with a first-time home buyer, that is the recipe of, I had an inspection, here's 38 things we want fixed, right? Because the agent doesn't know anything about it. And then the homeowner's terrified, and the agent doesn't know how to communicate with the the homeowner to say, hey, these aren't really that big of a deal here, right? This is normal for the age of the house, or this is whatever. And there's 6 other offers behind us, right? So we're probably going to lose it if we send a 38, point list of repairs we want done on the property for little things like there's a door stopper missing or whatever.
There's some poker to it though, because in the end, we've ignored emails. Like, we're not even going to respond to this. And then the clients get in like kind of a panic mode, or the agent, they're like, okay, fine. How about you just do the plumbing problem or whatever it was, that came up, and they'll ignore all 37 of the other items on the list. Like, now we're talking, because they're seeing they put 30 days notice in if they did it right, on their place, and they're moving into this house and they have a line, their loan lined up. It's well balanced on both sides.
Let's talk about that. Like, cause you just reminded me. So this is something that we definitely don't talk about this, like the negotiation side and strategies when you go to resell a property as a house flipper. And when I was newer in the business, I didn't know anything about this stuff. And we list a house and we get an offer. I'm like, it works, right? Like, can we close? What's going on, right? And I'll take whatever they want. It doesn't sound, it's all good. But we also got some of us, especially in my market, it sounds like your market, we get a little spoiled when a house doesn't sell in 3 days, right? And we're like, oh my God, it's the 3rd day. Why don't we have an offer, right? And when I remember when I was starting out, we'd have houses on market for 45 days, and that was like normal. So whatever. And but even then, we're getting these people that are aggressively as buyers submitting an offer in like day one, but with a offer expiration of like that day, like take it, right? And stuff like, oh, this is a great offer, you better take it or we're walking, right? And it's the first day. And I've seen house flippers and people that are reselling like panic. They're like, oh, we might not get another offer because there's a expiration of the offer deadline, right? Yeah. And we had friends here staying in Maui a couple of weeks ago that were in that exact situation, and they were freaking out because the offer deadline was like 12 hours. I'm like, blank them, like just ignore it. Don't even reply to them. Like, so like
if it's on the first weekend, you have that ability to say, hey, seller to review all offers on Sunday and counter on Monday. So there's a science to how we do it too. My favorite day is Wednesday. You populate a new listing on Wednesday. You can populate on Thursday. It's not bad. Friday's okay-ish. But I feel like by the time Tuesday comes, if someone were smart and hungry and they give you 72 hours from Tuesday, you're like, oh man, I can't even get into the first weekend with that. So we try and time them. So our first showings are that Thursday and Friday, and it puts us into multiples into the weekend. And we don't, we're not asking 309 for a lot of assets. We're asking the 299 range. They'll end at 309, but we're not trying to squeeze that last $9,000 out of certain kinds of products. And then you just kind of play it as the market goes.
Yeah, I think whoever you're listing with, if you're not the agent, right, just get a good agent that can support you as a house flipper, not your best friend who's your neighbor who's never done it before, right? And
I would say that our agents now are required to call the lenders, and if they haven't, I will. Yep. The lenders will tell you like, oh, Tarl, that doesn't sound familiar. Like they don't, if they're not working with the, if they're hungry and they're already docked up, they fell out of another deal. I have everything. They're 2 years of taxes. I have everything verified. It'll be a fast escrow. Then they actually will bid themselves down in time on how fast they can close. So the real communication is key. Just
huge.
Just communicate.
Huge. There's a lot of great agents out there that know how to do that. And there's a lot of horrible ones that don't take that extra mile because they're Facebook marketing instead. But it's so important to call those lenders, because today, with the way that jobs are, unemployment, like the amount of appraisals that are being done right now and how delayed they are, if the people don't even have their docs set in or anything, they haven't been fully underwritten, it's going to create you're going to think a 30-day close. No, it's going to be a 45, 60-day close, and it's going to be stressing you out. So huge component for sure. So we are getting on the hour. It's been an interesting show so far. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. And like it is maybe this seems a little discombobulated just because like Philippines is a little discombobulated right now in a, how do we source our deals? Okay. Off market foreclosures. You used to buy everything from foreclosures, and that's kind of like slowed down quite a bit.
But people can get by. New people out can have a pay-per-click budget of as low as sometimes $500, or low hanging fruit with a campaign that is banner clicks and other. It's just you don't have to think big or start big, and the money goes a long way if you can separate yourself. It's different for wholesalers because we're direct. So if someone calls us, it's like a simple yes or no, and then we set an appointment and close. It's a really competitive market out there, because I find a lot of the people that are clicking online will click on 3, 4, 5 other competitors' websites. So the sources, the availability of the data, and the ability to reach people who just want to sell their house. It's really a great time in the market digitally.
Yeah. Do you think that like in 2021, you're going to see a lot more houses come on the market just because there are people getting more comfortable? They finally want to sell. Plus also maybe they've been in deferment or forbearance for a while. And they don't want to go foreclosure because maybe they can't make it up, but they have the equity so they might put it on the market and so forth. Do you see something like that happening in 2021?
I'd say in 2021, I assume most people aren't going to, they're going to proactively, I see more contingent. How about that? People that have located a place they want to stay, they found a buyer who's willing to wait for them to sell their house also, because sometimes you're going into a deal contingent if you don't have your place sold. But I don't see people just throwing their place up on the market, moving into an apartment and hoping that they find, a bigger, better, different place, unless you are actively relocating to another state or another location or another area of some kind. I don't see the people just non-scientifically selling their houses and having the volume go up just out of that.
Got it. So you just don't see a bunch of people throwing their house on the market just because.
No, and there are people who are smart that did the move up market and they kept their old house. Maybe they sell that one, that the market has, given them a gift. But a good buddy of mine selling his first house he's ever bought. He's only owned it for 11 months. The market gave him an absolute gift, went up $100,000 or so. And so in his mind, he's like, I'm going to buy my first investment property and I'm going to go buy another house. So people just think differently, if you're active versus, passively just kind of living there and you don't look at it like an investment at all.
Interesting. I like that because everybody's got conflicting viewpoints on that right now with whether or not, people are going to list their houses just because, or whether or not they're going to sit and wait and have a plan.
Well, once fear kicks in, if you start making, if politically, if poor people start feeling, if rich people start feeling poor, they'll start selling everything. You'll see like the fear will kick in. Then, if the fear kicks in, then inventory is going to go up. Interesting.
Crazy. All right. Yeah. Any last thoughts from you, Tommy?
No, I would say avoid analysis paralysis. There is a lot of value in just doing a deal, whether it's your first deal, your next deal. Some people just look for the spreadsheet to tell them exactly what to do, but the emotion's out there right now for people that are buying. And buy, fix, and sell. Find an agent who believes in your vision, and a lender who is actively communicating with you, and go get your first deal or your next deal done.
Get it done. How can people get a hold of you?
What? Oh, great. Yeah. So my main brand is ilovehouses.com. So people, if it's just a simple Tommy at ilovehouses.com and anything, I get the most interesting, regionally speaking, and where people are listening from or other leads. And I'm just a ton of value when people just call and say, hey, what do you think of this thing? Or, would you ever look at a deal like this? And they're an agent, and agents are gold. Like they just have their one or two or three or interesting leads. So Tommy at ilovehouses.com, super simple email, or grab me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect.
Awesome. I'm Tarl Yarber. You can follow me at Tarl Yarber on Instagram, our company Fixated Real Estate. Check it out. And we will see you guys on the next show. We're not doing one again for another 2 weeks. We're going to start doing these every 2 weeks, not every week. Thank you, Tommy, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
I will see you in March.
Seeing you next month. Yeah, see you in March.
Later, guys. Bye.